Hello, everyone. I'm Dominic Copeland, and this is the Ish That Needs to Be Said. Welcome back, my friends. Now, if this is your first time, welcome. You're on one heck of a journey through some places that you never imagined that you go before. It's a journey of the mind, the body, the soul, and the spirit, bringing them all together as one. So, hit the like button. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you let your friends know, people know. Hey, people you don't even like, let them know too. They deserve to see a good thing also every so often. And you know what? I like to put good vibes out into the universe. So sometimes even people you don't like, give them a good word or two. It might change your life, change your destiny, do something good for you. Now today, words of advice, words to live by. The ish that needs to be said. Today, we're going to talk about rebuilding community, what we've lost. Tupac Shakur, the notorious B.I.G., Nipsey Hussle, Young Dolph. What do they all have in common? All were young brothers, rap artists, gone too soon, lost in what they called the game. The game is the streets, the game is the hustle, lost in the game. All killed. Now, I was watching this thing on TV about Young Dolph, and it was one of his friends. I think it was on YouTube. One of his friends, Young Dolph is a rapper from Memphis, was up and coming star, feeding the community, making a difference, was killed back in his own community. That's a few different things that I've seen. There was another rapper who was saying, out of, I think, New Orleans. Forget what his name is right now, so forgive me. I apologize on that. But he was saying, you can't stay where you're from, because where you're from, there's a lot of jealousy and envy, and people don't see you as a superstar that you are. They see you as something that they have to hate, something that makes them feel like they're less than what they are, because if I went to high school with you and all of a sudden I see you and you fulfilled your dreams and you're this big star and, my kids are listening to you, or my wife or my girlfriend might be fantasizing about you, how's that going to make me feel? And I want to insert myself a sense, myself a pride. So every time I see you, I got to show that I'm a man too. Even though that might not be what you're thinking, but now every time I see you, I got to say, I got to do something to make myself not feel bad. Because every time I see you is just a reminder. Like, man, this guy was just like me. Look what he did. I ain't doing anything. So jealousy and envy, that's a natural part of this thing called being a human being. It's all about how you manage it. Some people don't manage it well. They manage it through violence, through attacking, through killing. And many of these stories, we see that. And Young Dolph, his one friend, was saying, they killed someone that was feeding the community. He said that it's not the police that he has to worry about as much. He got to worry about the man in the mirror. Now, we're not talking about Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's not going to pop up and get you. Who knows, though? If he does, it'd be a miracle at this point. God rest his soul. Thank you, Michael, for all you've done, all the great things, and the rest I don't know about. But thank you for the music that you provided to the people. Now, he said that in all of this, they took away someone that was making a difference. It was the man in the mirror. And it was someone that looked just like him, another black person. He was saying that when he walks out the house, it's not the police so much that he has to worry about. He has to worry about someone that looks just like him, that goes through the same things that he goes through, that may talk about the same things he talks about, that speaks the same way he speaks. That's who he has to be afraid of. Because more often than not, in certain communities, that's who other black people have to fear, each other. Now, he said the quiet part out loud, because that's not something that we often, even as black folk, will be willing to say, because we already have enough stigma against us where we don't want other people coming into the community and telling us what we need to deal with. But if we're not willing to face that and deal with it ourselves, then at some point, we have to rectify that lie. We have to rectify that untruth that we have with ourselves. There are many forces that are against us. But we also have to realize that we, even as a community, as Black Americans, we have been conditioned as well by enslavement, by racism. You hear other rappers and songs saying they taught us to hate ourselves, to fear each other, to not work together. And we have a generation, you see a generation of athletes that are Black trying to change that stigma, trying to say, no, we can work together. We can build with and for each other without appearing like we're soft, without appearing like we're weak. The greatest strength that you can have is to build. Now, why am I saying all this? Well, one thing is because it's what we already had, but we lost. Coming out of the Civil War, part of what was supposed to happen, you hear the 40 acres and a mule, okay? The mule part wasn't exactly true at first, but the 40 acres, it was about giving Black people, Black Americans, the formerly enslaved, giving them land as you ever see Tom Cruise, the movie Far and Away, where he comes in and there's an Irishman coming from Ireland. He has to come in and he has to fight and he has to battle for this piece of land. He has to run and stake his claim to a piece of land before someone else stakes their claim to that same piece of land. So it was America giving away land. So all you had to do is run, find a plot of land. Okay, it's mine. We as Black Americans were denied that, denied the opportunity to do that. So what has happened with the Native Americans, of recent times, where they said, okay, this land, these reservations are yours, and you govern yourselves, right? You set up your own systems of government and so forth. So after the Civil War, that was supposed to be what was going to happen with Black Americans. You're going to be given land. You're going to be given opportunity. Blacks were participating, period of Reconstruction. Black people were participating in politics at a record level. And they were supposed to be given land that they could use to set up their own system of government. The government itself, the federal government, would not be involved with it. They could govern themselves. They could build themselves, almost build their own little country within the country. And fast forward, so that didn't happen, okay? But fast forward to my grandfathers in Reading, Pennsylvania. My grandfathers in Reading, Pennsylvania, unique thing about them, just like the Kennedys, they were bootleggers. What's important about that? So bootlegging was, at a time there was prohibition where alcohol was illegal and many other things. So there used to be people that would have to set up these illegal places for people to go and get their alcohol. So they have to have a whole illegal thing of bringing in booze. That's where you see Al Capone. That's where you see NASCAR racers, because they had to outrun the police in order to get the booze that was illegal to where it's supposed to be. So all these things spawn out of this era, this time. So my grandfathers, as bootleggers, they were able to set up a whole system of government within the city. So things happened, police called them, right? It wasn't about them being police, but them policing their own. But given that they had a responsibility that if people were doing things to harm the community, now they had to stop those people from harming the community. As I was told, that's what my uncles told me, as his father, one of my grandfathers told him, some people can only be dealt with one way. Some people are such a detriment to the community that they have to be killed. Now, this is the ish that needs to be said, not the stuff you want to hear. If a community is going to govern itself, it's going to have to take responsibility for people that are doing things to harm the community. Which brings us all the way back to Young Dolph, to Nipsey Hussle, Tupac, Biggie Smalls, people that were feeding the community, especially Young Dolph. Nipsey Hussle, feeding community, making a difference. And you have other people coming in from the community to kill them. And Young Dolph's friend was saying that no one from the community should support those people. No one should allow them to hide. No one should give them sanctuary. No one should protect them. They should be turned in immediately and dealt with. And back in the day, that's how it was. Those individuals were dealt with because you had to protect the best interest of the community. My grandfathers, they also brought up other family members from different places, from down south. They brought them up. They purchased a house where everybody could come in. They could live there as they worked on their skills and build the opportunities. And then once they were ready, they could move out into their own place. And then the next group of crop would come up to do the same things. So you're building this pipeline of success and opportunity for your people. And you have to protect that. You're protecting your own. You're not relying on the police to come in and protect you. You're protecting your own. He said every Sunday the community would get together at the house, the entire community, and they would discuss the issues of the community. What's going on? What are the problems? What are the issues? And how are we going to deal with that? So making decisions as a community for the best interest of the community. For the best interest of the community, making decisions as a community. Then fast forward a little bit more and you get into the civil rights movement, which was about inclusion. And some of that, Dr. King said, you know what? I feel like I left my people into a burning building. Because he said, I feel like in inclusion, I've taken away our capability to govern for ourselves, to have our own businesses. And now we have to rely on the businesses and the government of others instead of our own. Dr. King's father, you might not know this, but his father was a businessman. His father owned property. He owned houses. He owned land that white people lived in. Why is that important? That's equity. That's ownership. I'll say it again. That's equity. That's ownership. So no one from that community could tell him what to do. He told them what to do. And that led the way for his son, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But his son realized he had made a mistake because he didn't tap into what allowed him to truly become who he was, that network of equity, of ownership, of development of wealth, towards the aims that were going to be what's best for the community, that community empowerment. That was no longer there. That was taken away when you went to inclusion. And then after that, you have the Black Panthers trying to bring empowerment back to the community, power to the people. Power to the people because that's where the power belongs, in the hands of the people. And we all as Americans should have that same expression because that's where power belongs, in the hands of the people. So they came back working towards a sense of empowerment for the people. They came up with free lunches, which then got adapted by the larger government. Now, when the Panthers started going into other communities outside of just black communities, and they started working with, just as Dr. King, he was organizing the Million Poor Man's March. And his wife said that he was not killed because, and I got this I was watching Byron Allen, right? And he was saying this story that he spoke with Coretta Scott King, and she said that, you know, her husband, Martin, was not killed because of civil rights. He was killed when he fought for financial equity, when he was uniting the people and bringing them together towards their best financial interests. White people, black people, you know, Latino, Asian, Jewish, everybody, bringing everybody together towards their best financial interests. That's when he was killed. The Black Panthers, when they started reaching out to other communities and other neighborhoods to unite them and bring them together, they were decimated. And then out of that, you have drugs starting to become more prevalent in the neighborhoods, really growing. You go into the crack epidemic. You have gangs. See, gangs as we know them today was never the true purpose or intent of the gangs. Gangs came out of that whole culture of, like my grandfathers, you unite together to be the protectors of the community, to decide to give the community its empowerment, to decide to protect your community. And you hear them talking about it sometimes with the gangs over in LA. When they first got together, it wasn't about what it became, what it is now even. It was about bringing everyone in the community together and protecting the community and its best interest. But then it became about fighting each other, fighting against each other, harming each other. You got drugs that get into it. You got government that gets into it. You have other influences that can't keep the people, that don't want the people to be together. They're trying to keep them apart. And this isn't stuff that I'm just coming with off of the top of my head with people. This is all, it's documented. It's historical. You go find out for yourselves. Do your own research. But I'm here to say the ish that needs to be said. Okay? This is the truth about how we find ourselves in this situation. Now, I've learned to ask myself better questions, from Tony Robbins and others, greats in how to question yourself so that you can bring about productive results. It's about questioning myself to try to figure out why are things the way that they are today. Often we fail to even question. We just think, oh, this is the way it is. It's the way it's supposed to be, the way it always was, the way it always will be. No, my friend said it's not. The way it is today is the way that it was made and manufactured to be. It is because someone or some entity, some organization made decisions for it to be that way. And if we're going to change it, we have to make decisions for it to be different than what it has been. So now we do have an infrastructure, even with the gangs and so forth. There is an infrastructure of community empowerment. We just have to decide financially how those groups and organizations are going to thrive so that now they can put money back into the community to develop equity, to develop ownership. So that now, say, for example, when people are buying or renting, you can start up programs where you're developing these properties. And as people are renting, once they get to a certain amount, now that can start to apply towards them actually purchasing their homes. Now people take pride in their community empowerment. And you start protecting the community. Instead of allowing drugs to be brought in and flooded because of money and financial purposes, you protect the community from those negative influences. Keep it outside so that the community can flourish inside. Should I be saying all these things? Probably not. It's probably not safe for me to be saying these things because people who have said them in the past haven't fared very well. But you know what? I didn't come here to say the things that I should say or safe to say or might be fun to say. I came to say the ish that needs to be said. So I'm saying it from the heart. I'm saying it from, I'm screaming it from the mountaintops, my friends. It's coming from a greater, higher power than myself. And I know that these are the things that need to be said because until we say them, society's not going to change. We're not going to get to the promised land. We're just not. And right now we're far from it, but we're also close. We just need to realize the things that we have to change in order for us to get there. Dr. King said it best, I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen what's on the other side. I've seen the glories of freedom, and I promise you, my friends, we will get there. I can't promise you that we will get there, but I can promise you if you put in the work and the dedication, if you put in the focus and that vision, we can achieve our own land of promise. We can climb our own mountaintop. But see, the funny thing about the promised land, there's nothing there. It's all about what we bring with us. How can I explain it in a way that might make sense? It's like a mirage. There's something that you see ahead. It's like, wow, it looks amazing, looks wonderful, looks beautiful. But you get there. There's nothing there. Nothing but dry lands, nothing but sand. You're like, man, how is this possible? Because the promised land isn't something that you go to, it's something that you find within and that you bring with you. And until you can find within yourself that promise that God has instilled within you, until you can find and elicit that, bring that forward, until you can be the person that can achieve and accomplish the promised land, you'll never be granted access to it. So we as a society can only be granted access to the promised land once we have evolved, once we have been enlightened enough to then see the promised land. We bring it with us. It's not there waiting, but it is there waiting within us. So anytime that we decide to bring from within to without, promise will be accomplished. But until then, my friends, we're going to have a time, a diggings of finding a land that we think is this mythical, magical land. It won't be there until we bring it. That I can promise you. So that's why I'm talking about rebuilding the community and what we've lost. Because this goes beyond, to me, my belief is that what happens in the black community, what has happened in the black community, that is just an example of what it's going to take for us to, as a society, accomplish the promise. What has happened to the least of us, if we can learn those lessons, will affect all of us, the greatest of us. Now, we were never the least of us, but we were treated that way. You can tell a lot about a society by how they treat the people that they deem to be, quote unquote, lesser. When you can allow those people to be greater, then the greatest part of your society has begun to evolve. And one of the other big things that we need to truly take a look at in our society, I'm going to ask you a question, okay? I think I asked this before in another episode, but if not, I'm going to ask it again. Education, the lost purpose. So I'm going to ask you this. What is the purpose of education? What do you think about that? What is the purpose of education? Education, you go to school for 12 years, you go to college another 4 years, 16 years or so. So you get a doctorate or master's or whatever else. So that might be even more. So now you have this whole totality of things that you've done within your life. And what has the purpose of that been? Especially when it comes to those first 12 years of a life and what you're trying to accomplish. What, my friends, is the purpose of that? Think about it. Another important fundamental question, which should be a fundamental question, is who should determine that purpose? And why are there no alternatives to us going to this place of education for 12 years, the first, 12 years, not the first 12 years of our lives, but once you get to a certain age, now you're in there for 12 years. And by law, you have to go. Only alternatives you might find at a young age are jail, juvenile jail. Isn't that interesting? I myself, I find that fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I'm going to tell you something I probably shouldn't tell you, but I'm going to tell you. Again, it's the ish that needs to be said, not what is nice or polite to say or safe to say. But when I was younger, I was in gifted classes for a while. What's that mean? It's classes for people they feel are highly intelligent. And while I was in these gifted classes, I learned things that normal students were not learning. I learned about the stock market. We built a stock portfolio. I learned about government and how it works. I learned about all these different aspects of society that weren't being talked about in the regular classrooms. And I thought to myself, why aren't they? I was like, everyone should know this. Everyone should know how to invest. Everyone should know what stocks are. Everyone should know how it works. Everyone should know how our political system and financial system truly works. Because we're all playing the game that they want us to play, but not the game that's truly being played. Say that again, because it's fundamental to life. We're all playing the game that they tell us we're playing, but not the game that's truly being played. and we can understand the game that's truly being played, it becomes like the Matrix, if you ever seen that movie. Now you can read the code. Now you can start to actually change the Matrix itself. You start to impact and change the game because you know and understand the game you're in and how to do that. So in education, you're educated to what people want you to know, what the government, the governing body of your society wants to know. And often, in a lot of education, if you look at the history of it, especially here in Massachusetts, you had figures that throughout history were fundamental in determining the course of education and what it should be about and what it should stand for. Have schools named after them here. So you have private interests dictating the course of public education. And even to this day, that continues where you have, if they can't, since you have a separation of church and state, right? That's where you start to have these private schools pop up, these prep schools, these Catholic schools. All these other schools start to pop up where they can now interact their own personal interests, political and social, within these schools and within the scope of education. So a lot of education hasn't been fueled by the will and needs of the people. It's been fueled by special interest and wealth. Why is that important? Because throughout time in all of society, and what I learned in those gifted classes is not everyone is given the same information. There's sacred information that's only open to certain people. And that's been true throughout all of time. There used to be priests and everything else that only had the specialized information. They called it information from the gods. So they were the ones that were allowed to have that information, but the common people were not. They were the ones that were allowed to utilize that information towards whatever end. And that's how you get these so-called groups they have. I don't know if any of them really exist, Illuminati, all those other things. I don't know if they really exist, but that's how you have all these groups where they say the sacred information. But even in certain organizations, Freemasons, you have like a Freemason to the 36th degree or whatever it is. That means that person has other secret information that other members in different areas don't have. So starting a new member, first order, whatever it is, member, doesn't have that information, that knowledge, that sacred knowledge. So now when you go to public schools, there is such a thing as sacred knowledge about how society actually works that common people don't have access to in the education process. They don't get, they don't learn. Now you have to go to specialized schools in order to get that information. We're not playing the same game, my friends. We are not playing the same game as everybody else in society. And you're playing the game that they tell you that you're playing. Go to work hard, get an education, and you can build a life for yourself. That's a lie. That is an absolute lie. Look at the rates you have to pay for college and everything else. The debt that you have to accrue. The debt you have to accrue does not make sense. Going to college and in 1 year having to pay, $30, $40, $60, $100,000 so that you come out within 4 years with $200,000, $300,000 in debt. What job are you going to get coming out of college? It's going to help you to pay that debt off, where you can still build your life. You can still achieve what's been called, quote unquote, the American dream, that I talked about before, has become the American nightmare. What job are you going to get? But still, they can charge that kind of money without having to produce those results. But you, as an individual in this society, cannot produce a lack of results and expect to get that kind of income. You have to produce even greater results to get less income. I'll say that again. Colleges can charge you whatever they want, and they are not obligated or indemnified to the result. Whether you get a job or not is not their responsibility. It is solely yours. And what that job pays you, they do not care. So their income Their revenue is not tied to your results. But when you go to work, even if you do your best, often you're not going to be paid what you should be paid. And you're going to be held to a higher standard of accountability. It doesn't make sense. The math is not mathing here, my friends. But again, how are we going to change that if we do not know, first of all, that sacred knowledge that this is the game that we're actually playing? People, organizations, corporations are getting rich. In the Matrix, he says the goal of the Matrix was to turn the human being into a battery. The goal of our current society now, my friends, is to turn the human being into an ATM machine, getting and leveraging the most possible from you while paying you the least. Look, this is the ish that needs to be said, my friends. My name is Dominic Copeland. Press the like button, subscribe. Come back next time. We're going to delve deeper into this. If I'm around for the next time, they might come get me. They might come get me the stuff that I'm saying right now. This is the sacred knowledge that's not meant for everybody. It's just the truth. But my friends, I'm here to speak the ish that needs to be said, that truth that no one wants to hear, or either doesn't know to tell you or doesn't want you to know. I want you to know it. Come back. Keep believing. Keep achieving. Together, we rise. Together, we rise. Power to the people. God bless, and I'll talk to you soon.